Welcome everyone. Today I am going to discuss about a very important topic in pharmaceutics subject, that is angle of repose. So before going to discuss the main topic, first of all we have to understand the basic concept of angle of repose. So what is angle of repose? Have you ever poured a sand on the flat surface? What we will see, as like water, it cannot spread out like water. It basically piles up into the flat surface. This phenomena is known as an angle of repose. In this video, we exactly understand that what is angle of repose and what are the purpose for determining the angle of repose in pharmaceutical industry. So what is the definition of angle of repose? Angle of repose, basically it is a maximum angle between the surface of the pile and its horizontal plane. So how we will determine the angle of repose or why angle of repose is important? Basically in pharmaceutical industry, various powders and granules are used as a bulk drug. So the flow property of the powder or the granules are very important in case of tablet punching, in case of granulation, or in case of storage condition. So the determination of the flow property of the powder is very important in pharmaceutical formulation. So that's why we need to determine the angle of repose. So now the next question is how we can determine the angle of repose. So we can determine the angle of repose by the method, that is fixed funnel method. What will happen? In fixed funnel method, we can see that a funnel is fixed with the clamp in a certain distance and powder is poured inside the funnel, and due to the gravitational force the powder is free fall and it's piled up like a cone-like structure. And according to the angle of repose, or according to the mathematical expression of angle of repose, that is tan theta suman h by r. This theta is angle of repose. That means the maximum angle between the flat surface and the horizontal surface. And h means the height of the piles. When the free flowing powder is form a cone like structure, the height of the pile is known as h and r is radius. So that is h is height, r is radius. So if we determine the theta, we can determine the angle of repose. For example, if the height of the pile is suppose 7 centimeter, that is 7 centimeter, and the radius is 10 centimeter. So according to the angle of repose, tan theta is equal to 7 by 10, or theta is equal to tan inverse 7 by 10, or we can write down in this way that tan theta is equal to 0.7, that is near about 35 degree. That means in this example the theta value is 35 degrees. So in 35 degree, why we will understand, according to the angle of repose we can determine or we can classify the flow property of the various powder. For example, if the angle of repose is very low, that means in between the 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, that means the flow property of the powder is excellent. So, and when the angle of repose is gradually increased, the flow property is also reduced and the angle of repose is very high. So we can conclude that the low angle of repose, that means excellent flow property, and the high angle of repose, that is very poor flow property. In this way, due to the angle of repose, we can categorize various powder. Now, what are the various factors which influence the angle of repose? First example is particle size. The particle size is very important for determining the angle of repose. If the particle size is very low or very small, then the cohesiveness is very high, that angle of repose is very high. So we can conclude that if the powder is very fine in form, then the angle of repose is very high. That means the powder is not easily spread out. So the angle between the flat surface and the horizontal surface is gradually increase the angle of repose. Second, particle shape. If the particle is irregular in shape, then the flow property is very poor. Here we can say that the poor flow property, that means the angle of repose lies between the 46 to 55 degrees Celsius. If the powder is spherical in shape, that means the angle of repose is very low. and it's considered as a higher flow property. It is very good for the pharmaceutical formulation. And the moisture content. Moisture also vary the angle of repose. If the moisture content is very high, then the angle between the two surfaces is gradually increase. So the angle of repose is very high, that means the higher in flow property. So the moisture content is directly proportional to the flow property of the powder. In this way we can determine the angle of repose in pharmaceutical industry while we formulate various solid dosage form by using the fine powder or the granules. This angle of repose determination is very important. Other than the angle of repose, we also consider the Hartnett ratio, Carr's index, etc. And next day I will discuss about the another topic. Thank you.